All right, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone, wherever you're joining in any part of the world. For me, it's about 5 a.m. in the morning. And of course, for Shrihari, who is our guest, is about past midnight, half past midnight. So there are sacrifices that a lot of people make, and I want to thank him very much for this opportunity and for this sacrifice as well. And for my folks in Africa, I know it's 8 p.m. Dinner time or almost bedtime. So thank you to you as well. This is the Africa Disciplined Agile Meetup. We meet every month where we share ideas about agile, lean, flow, and theory of constraints, everything that has to do with disciplined agile and agile as a whole. So my name is Peter Motoshaw, and I'll be your host today. I just thought we should quickly refresh our mind on why we are here. But in February, we did a kickstart of this project, and we are a group sold out to promoting real value of lean and agile practices. And this is based on the freedom that disciplined agile promises. We want to look at individuals and organizations in Africa with an interest to develop their agile and lean practices. And so we are a couple of people on the call, so there are still so many people that we can invite to join. At the end of the day, we want to look at how we can continue to, build our knowledge and transfer that knowledge. That is knowledge about Scrum, about Lean, about Kanban, Safe, Lean Startup, all the processes that we can see under the big umbrella of Agile. And that is why we continue to bring people, experts all around the world, to talk on their experiences and how it has been. We want to make these as practical as possible. And this is brought to you by Pete Lauren Consulting. That is the organization I work for. We are also an authorized training partner. So if you have training requests or coaching requests, please talk to us, and you can also jump on that website for more information. Now, today we'll be looking at the disciplined agile approach of guided continuous improvement, and this is brought to us by Shrihari Alawani. And again, I want to say a big thank you to you for joining us today. We have had a lot of conversation in the past. I know the wealth of experience that you've got, and I know how much we can also learn from you today. Just before I hand over to Shrihari, a little bit of information so that you guys will know exactly who you're talking to. Shrihari is based out of Pune in India and works for one of the largest banks. And he is heading the engineering practice for the India area. Shrihari is passionate about business agility, enterprise agility, and is a recognized practitioner of disciplined agile. Now, when we say he's a recognized practitioner, I think that's an understatement. It is more like an expert because he holds the highest certifications of the disciplined agile, which is the DAVSC, and of course, is also a DAC, which is both of them are disciplined agile value stream consultant certification and disciplined agile coach credentials for PMI. I've been through that process, and I know how hectic it could be. I know it's for people who really have been through a lot and can show the agile scars to hit. So he is passionate about sharing his experience, and is also constantly learning from like-minded people, and of course from diverse community. And this is a diverse community, I can say. I know where that is coming from, because every time I share my experience, I also learn as well. And it's so great to see that Shrihari also has that as part of what he holds very dearly. Without wasting further time, I will hand over to Shrihari to take us further. I'll just stop sharing, and of course, Shuri, if I can take it from there. Thank you.
Yeah. Start with, let me share my screen, and please let me know if you can see my screen.
Yes, I can see your screen, but it's not in the sharing mode. Okay, yeah, better.
Yeah, okay. Thanks for all the kind words, Pete, and I really appreciate all the joiners. Not really sure which part of the world you guys are in, but I am based out of Pune, India. I know Pete is from Australia, so he kind of waked up from his bed just now, probably half an hour ago. Some of you might be looking forward to have a kind of a supper or a dinner and go to bed. I don't know what part of the world you guys are in, but I'm really sure that number 15 is something which I can see on the screen, total participants. If I exclude myself, Pete, and one more, then at least I have got 10 to 12 people, or now its number is increased by 16. So there are passionate individuals on this call who wants to not just learn discipline agile approach, but also I think want to share. And one of my style and unique style probably is not, I normally don't just speak, right? I mean, I would like these sessions to be more interactive, because as Pete mentioned, I'm not just going to share my learning, but I'm also going to learn something at the end of this session, from some of you or all of you. So again, a quick introduction. Myself, Sri, based out of India, work for one of the international bank which is famous in Asia and Europe. Have been in the industry from last 21 years. Big advocate of discipline agile, not just now, but almost from last 6 to 7 years. I have been contributing to spread the awareness, also a big practitioner within the bank and in the industry as well. And have been, since I kind of got to know about discipline agile, my interest in this particular stream was very much on the improving or increasing mode. And now at this stage, I'm actually I would say I'm honored to say that I have been recognized as a discipline agile practitioner within the space which I work for. Our today's topic, which is a guided continuous improvement.
I don't think so.
William, you have to go on mute. Thanks. I want to basically start with some questions, on this call, and I just want to get a feel in terms of how much we know about discipline agile, what do we know about discipline agile, and any particular thing that you want to talk about, which is special about discipline agile. So for me, these are the 5 things which I love most about discipline agile, which I have kept on the slide. But I want to also understand from you, what is that one or many things that you love about discipline agile, and the forum is open. Anybody wants to go first?
Do you want us to talk or type in? Okay, maybe voice is better if you can. Is that okay?
Voice is better, yeah.
Okay, so the floor is yours, everyone. What do you know or like about discipline agile? I think I really like the flexibility that comes with discipline agile, which is teams, individuals are able to choose their ways of working. That is really cool for me.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I think Karim mentioned that context counts is something which he likes about. I don't know why this is not being minimized. Okay. Personally, when I started talking about or reading about or practicing about that, one of the biggest advantage I saw, because I was fed up with Scrum, and I'm not against Scrum, but I was really fed up with Scrum 10 years back when my team learned about, I was a Scrum Master, by the way, that point in time, and I was leading a team of almost about 15, 17 people. And we realized that by following Scrum, we could release a little faster in production and our quality was improved. But overall, we did not really, so after 3 or 4 months of time, after quite a few deliveries of sprint, we realized that we are not really improving further. So we are kind of a Scrum team, and then we are a Scrum team forever, right? And then few years back, I got into a scaling framework, which I learned, and I'm a practitioner about of that framework. I don't want to kind of call a name, but one of the biggest industry recognized scale framework. I liked it. We adopted it, but then we realized that we are actually very much within the specific set of boxes, right? So we have got very specified, prescribed ways of doing things. And I realized that probably my team or my product line is not going to really go further than what we really achieved. I'm not saying that we could not achieve much. We did achieve, but we kind of reached to a stage of stagnancy. We could not really improve further. And as you always know that from the customer-centric perspective, from the customer perspective, they would always need more, right? Need more quality, need more faster. They need things a little bit more cheaper, blah, blah, blah. So I was really not sure, what do I do? And because I was a disciplined agile practitioner, I kind of thought about, first of all, am I empowered to do something which kind of, me choosing my ways of working? And then I read a book of ways of working, and I had a couple of conversations with, one of my senior managers to kind of talk about it. And then I said, the first thing which I liked about this particular toolkit, DA toolkit, is that it allows me, and as Pete mentioned, it's about flexibility. It allows me to get rid of all the constraints which are being kind of embedded by a specific framework or a method, and go a little bit more wider, look at a DA toolkit and see what is the best thing which basically works for me. So DA is not a framework, guys. So please, I'm sure you all must be knowing it, but I re-emphasize in my all classes and all sessions where I want to basically ensure, being a practitioner, that people should not look at DA as a framework. It is not a framework. It is a toolkit.
Yeah, Shrihari, as a matter of fact, there are some comments on in the chat. Yeah, so one of the comment is from Hayo, and Hayo, I think, is joining us from Nigeria, if I guess correctly. I said DA is a toolkit, not a framework, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah, Olatokumbo says it is new to DA, but should be around guided and focused approach to budget spend versus project scope. That is another angle to it. And Karim is saying context specific, which means context count as well. So those are very good statements that came from the audience to your question about what do you know about this discipline agile. Very good.
Very good. Thank you, guys. Right. So it is basically around flexibility. It is a toolkit. So there are lots of things which are available, which are, I would say, best practices, right? Let's try and simplify things. Let's not make things complex. It is a toolkit. So in toolkit, you have various different tools available. Depends on what you need, you have to go and choose it. But how do you choose it? Unless you know basically your context. So you have to basically ensure that you understand your context. You don't have to read the entire book and then choose something, right? You have to understand that, you know what? My project timelines are different. My product has got different release cycle. My customer is different. So what suits best for me is something which I'm going to choose for myself. Choice is good, right? And you need to also be a little bit more aware about the enterprise. It's not just about the team, right? because you need to think a little bit more wider. So beyond team, you have to also think about what are the organizational needs, what are the organizational priorities. Okay, so you have to be a little bit more going beyond the team level and think about enterprise, right? So that's the beauty of DA. Thanks for all the comments, guys. My problem is that my monitor is I don't know why this window is not being kind of minimized when I try and do that. Yeah, good. So I can now read the comments. Thank you. Anybody else who wants to speak on the call and talk about any particular beauty of DA that they love and the reason behind loving it? Because sometimes voice is much better than the text.
Okay, feel free to unmute yourself if you want to talk, and I can coordinate in case there are multiple people that want to talk at a time.
For me, hi, Kareem here. For me, I think it's just really the flexibility that it provides in terms of you don't have to be set to one specific thing. So I think that's what I see is the real benefit of Disciplined Agile.
Right. Thank you. Thanks, Kareem. Yeah, absolutely agree. That was one of the reasons why I fall in love with Disciplined Agile in first place, almost 6-8 years back. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Okay. Let me go to a next slide. I'm not a slide person again. I normally I'm good at basically having an inclusive conversation rather than a slide. But this particular slide, when you look at it, I don't know what really comes to your mind, but it tells you one thing. So it's a graph of effectiveness versus time. On y-axis, you have got effectiveness, and x-axis, you have got time. So over the period of time, if you're working with a specific agile methodology or a framework, what eventually will happen? You will have to start with, because we are starting here. Let me quickly try and see if I can use the pane. We're starting here. There will be a dip in the effectiveness to start with, because you are learning. It is your learning curve. I call it as a learning curve. For example, if you're learning Scrum, if your team is going to follow Scrum and they want to basically adopt that new culture and new ways of working and the methodologies and templates and practices in Scrum, their performance or their effectiveness will be lower than what it was before. But once they pick up at this point, then their effectiveness will increase. But what happened? It is constant on y-axis, you can see. So exactly the same thing that happened with me in 2012. I picked up a methodology to solve a problem, which was not a generic problem, which was very much a specific problem. But what eventually happened after that is that we solved the problem here, but we maintain using the same methodology over the period of time, which basically did not give us any more improvement. So the improvement is zero here. Improvement occurred only during this phase, right? So is it bad? No, it is not bad. If we have a specific problem to solve for a small time, yes, adoption of the agile method to solve that problem is good. But what about a project, or what about a product organization when you are actually working on various different things, right? And projects and products, it will be difficult to kind of just adopt a methodology, agile methodology, or a particular framework. It's difficult. So one of the key challenges you have to understand in this particular, why we need to go DA, is because DA is not against Scrum. DA is not against SAFe. DA is not against any other particular methodology or tool. But what DA says is that your effectiveness will basically nullify when over the period of time you don't retrospect and continuously improve, right? You cannot just rely on a method or a type of method. That's very, very important from this graph. don't want to go beyond this unless we basically understand this. Any questions? No questions?
Right,
We'll
guys.
all give you that. Yeah, sorry, Pete.
Yeah, I was just encouraging people, if there are any questions, feel free to ask, or any addition, clarification, that would be great as well.
Yeah, so in all, what you get is the effectiveness, this much effectiveness, but you got this here, actually. You don't have to actually say, for example, this is 2022, what, May, right? And this is May 2023. What eventually happens is that over a period of 1 year, you did not really improve anything. You got the benefit, you know, you were here, say, for example, Jan 2022, you adopted a methodology, you learned it, that's why you actually, your effectiveness was down. But when you reached the point where the effectiveness was high, since then it is all linear. Yep. It means that during this 1 year time frame, you actually did not improve at all, which is anti-agile.
Shrihari, we have someone's on higher, has his hands on. I think he has a question for you. Sorry to bump into your thought process.
That's fine. Please go ahead, sir.
All right. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Sorry, thanks, nice presentation. Sorry, just a quick question, please, around this curve. My name is Ayorinde from Lagos. Basically, I'm a Scrum Master. All right. So I just have a bit of question around this curve, effectiveness in terms of agile adoption and all that. All right. My questions go like, for example, using, say, a Scrum, basically, right? Of course, at the end of each sprint, you're expected to actually have a ritual where you improve, right? Continuous improvement, right? Using some other complementary practices, such as, DevOps and the likes, right? So I believe in Scrum, basically, there is always, within the cycle time, there is always, that movement to have a kaizen movement on how the improvement can, in terms of people, processes, in terms of complementary practices that you can leverage to actually improve in your upcoming sprint and all that. So I'm just trying to relate that to this call. Is this basically saying that, in terms of using Scrum, for example, there is no, basically, does this really apply to other, Scrum, basically? Because I believe in Scrum, there's a continuous improvement in terms of processes, people, communication, and, among et cetera, while you are running a sprint, basically. So I don't know. I'm just looking at this curve, and I'm looking at basically what exactly this curve is actually referring to.
Yeah, absolutely right. A very good, courageous question. And here is the answer. The moment you say I'm following a Scrum, you are bounded by the Scrum methodology, right? So the practices that you are going to pick up from the retrospectives are going to be within the guidelines of Scrum. Do you agree? So I agree.
Correct. That's
I agree that on this is your sprint. Let's consider that this is your sprint cycle and this is where your delivery is happening. Every single sprint, you have got retrospection. What you are doing here, because you are saying I'm following Scrum, you are defining the boundary of your methodology. So the continuous improvement that you are talking about is within the boundary of Scrum. You're not going beyond and taking some good practice from some other either methodology or other toolkit, right? So eventually what's happening is that you're not improving in a hybrid way. You are very much within the constraint of a framework. And that is why I basically consider, or not just me, it is basically the DA stuff, is that your effectiveness will almost be linear. Sometimes what eventually happens, this graph is very kind of rigid. Sometimes what eventually happens is that the graph may look like this, but it is not it is not really going much, in the upward direction. It is very much linear. It might be little non-linear, but if you look at their slope, it is not really changing much. And that's why, Ayo, you need to be a little bit more flexible around, the guided continuous improvement, which I will come to in the next slide.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Sure. This is not a rocket science. You know all these things, right? So what DA basically proposes is experimentation. And experimentation is always about flexibility, right? So you know your problem. Nobody else knows your problem. You know your problem. You have to identify a potential improvement, right? So when you know the problem and when you identify the potential improvement, you will look at, so there are two possibilities. One is you think on your own and try a solution, try a new way of working. I call it as a solution or experiment. And then you say that, oh, if it is working, continue. If it doesn't working, stop and try something else. It is not a rocket science, right? It is basically the PDCA cycle. I think I'm just kind of, we call it as a PDCA, but now here it is not just check, plan, do, study, and act. And study is a very important word here, right? Study is all about ensuring whether the solution that you are actually applying is effective, is adding the value, right? What is important in this particular case is from the DA perspective, they have got, I don't know how many of you have got access to a DA browser where there's a DA toolkit which is given, and there's all process goals which are given. For each process goals, basically there is a very specific guidance given in terms of what all you can try at what level, right? I don't want to go into the details of that particular section, but you can very much Google DA browser, look at all the process goals which DA basically provides, and it's almost complete. And every single quarter or of that period, they update it. So it's not a one-time thing. They are basically taking the feedback from the user community like you, me, and everybody else who are passionate about Disciplined Agile and actually adopting Disciplined Agile in their day-to-day, and getting that feedback to ensure that their DA toolkit is up to date, right? So the process goals will help you identify different solutions while you are actually trying an experiment, right? And if some process, if some solution does not work, you can easily go quickly, change the direction, pick up a new solution and move forward. You don't have to actually wait for longer to kind of see whether the solution is working or not. So it is identifying a problem, identifying a potential improvement, try the new ways of working, assess the effectiveness. I'm just looking at the positive part, adopt to the new ways of working, and then get the learning. If you happen to be within the Scrum framework, what eventually will happen is that you identify a problem, you identify a potential improvement which is within the framework of Scrum. You will try that, but the problem is that if Scrum itself is a problem, if Scrum is not the right fit for the kind of work that you do, eventually you will basically not come out of that loop. You will end up sitting in the same loop because you are not recognizing that you are being constrained by a methodology or a framework, right? You need to be a little bit more louder and look at, because DA toolkit has got, it doesn't really love any particular framework. It basically has everything from all agile framework, and it has its own essence as well. So depending on your situation, somebody said context counts, right? Depending on your context, you have got a flexibility to choose your solution during the experimentation from the DA toolkit, and you will have, because it's experimentation, it has got a very short lifespan. It is not a 6 months or 1 year project, right? Experimentation is normally very short. It's a week or 2 or 3, maybe. You will be able to see whether there is a value and it is adding any effectiveness to what you are trying to solve. If yes, then adopt. If not, then abandon. But at the end of the day, you have to share the learnings with others, because that is the main principle here. It's not just whether you accept or reject. It's all about how you share that wider, saying that, oh, you know what, we were the team of 5, we were using Scrum, but for this particular problem, we did go to a DA toolkit, we did pick up this particular method, it is working for us, please. So others don't have to experiment that again, so there's a lot of reusability aspect built into this. Look at this diagram. Now your question around Scrum, right? What is the difference between the guided continuous improvement and continuous improvement? Continuous improvement, you can see that it's a very linear graph. Let me try and see if we can use the pen, right? Continuous improvement is again the same. So it is improving. So these are these are the outputs of your retrospection. Sorry. These are basically giving you some benefits in terms of effectiveness, but over the period of time, so how much time it is taking? Long time to improve, right? So by the time it basically go here, you are already here. Continuous improvement is because we have got toolkit ready from DA. Why it is guided? Guided is because you don't have to boil the ocean. You don't have to try SAFe and then try Scrum and then try Nexus and then try Spotify and then try something else, right? You don't have to keep changing the frameworks and methodologies. What you can do is that you have a toolkit which is given by DA, which is always evolving, by the way, which is not a static kind of toolkit, which is always evolving on a periodic basis. You have got that toolkit as your key, I would say, spanner to always continuously improve on a guided basis, because there is a guidance given. That's why GCI is guided, right? Versus continuous improvement is not guided. You have to understand the difference. What is not guided versus what is guided. Okay, that's why you will always see over the period of time this particular graph. On when you actually go with the GCI approach, your effectiveness will be on high in the shortest time versus when you follow the unguided continuous improvement. Is unguided continuous improvement bad? No, it is not bad. It is still good. The problem is that you will have to do the experimentation on your own, and you will have to, it is very similar to if you are going in a forest and somebody is telling you that please don't go that way because there's a tiger, but you said that no, but I want to see the tiger. Okay, fair enough, go, and you know what will happen. If somebody is telling you that there's a tiger, don't go that way, and if you follow him, you are still alive, right? You don't have to always learn from your own experiences. You have to sometimes learn from somebody else's experiences, right? So that basically you increase your effectiveness more faster. So you have to always ensure that guided continuous improvement GCI is a DA thing, which is basically, again, DA doesn't say that basically we are not going to give you any particular process or effective method from, they don't hate Scrum, they don't hate SAFe. They probably will have something very good like a PI planning. I don't know how many of you know PI planning, which is basically a SAFe methodology, right? A PI is basically a product increment, right? So, sorry, program increment. So if some of your program needs are going to be fulfilled by a PI planning event, DA will say, go and use it, which is basically defined by SAFe Agile Framework, Scale Agile Framework, SAFe, right? So they don't hate anybody. They have the tools from all different methods, agile methods and frameworks. And it is up to us, how do we want to really use them under the banner of guided continuous improvement and learn from that. Yeah, we'll take a pause before I go next. Now, same thing, which I don't want to repeat it here, but the same thing, right? This is basically our first case where I talked about using a specific method like a Scrum. Continuous improvement is a little bit more effective for a period of time, but guided continuous improvement is extremely effective in the shortest time, right? So guided choices will always lead to a faster improvement, right? You will always be improving more faster when you actually have a support from DA toolkit, because they are going to be guided.
Okay, cool. There's a question from Bula in the chat. And the question, I can quickly read it out, says, when you say guided improvement, does it mean more options to choose from the toolkit are added on a continuous basis? How often are options added in the DA toolkit?
Yeah, so in my experience, yeah, it's a very good question, Bula. Thank you. So yes, guided improvement is basically, not learning on your own, but looking at the toolkit as a guide and choose from the toolkit, as you rightly said, on a continuous basis, right? Because you will always have an improvement opportunity, right? I never saw a team who said that we don't want to improve. I think we are done. There's always opportunity to improve in your ways of working. You will always come to a stage where you will always feel that now your graph is actually like a stagnant, like a plateau. Now you need to think what else you can do. And when you come to that point, what eventually will happen is that you will have to always explore what is your problem. What is it? Again, going back to the same slide. What is your problem? And then follow this cycle. Now, what your question is, how often they update the options in the DA toolkit? I have seen, I don't know whether I can share a screen. Let me see. Somebody has shared the DA browser. Pete, I think it's you. Let me see. Can you see my browser, by the way?
Yes, we can see. Yeah, we can see your screen.
Yeah. So if you go here, the DA browser has got different versions. I don't know where to go.
Yeah.
Okay. See, this is what will answer your question. So most recent version is released on 31st of March 2022. Okay. Some of the process goals in 5.5 model are still marked as version 5.2, 5.3, 5.4 because they did not change visibly for this release. 5.0 was released in 2020. 5.3 was released from 5.0. 5.3 was released from 1st of February. 5.4, 4.0. So you can see normally they have a couple of releases a year. Now they are giving a release schedule for 2022. They are saying 5.5 is coming, 5.6 is coming in June, 5.7 is coming in September. So every quarter they have a release. Yeah. So what it means is that there is a very dedicated set of individuals. I don't know if you know the guy called Al Shalloy, who is basically the owner of Flex. He's one of the key contributor, and there are people who are actually sitting. And it's up to you also. If you are a PMI member and a disciplined agile coach and a value stream consultant, you can very much be in a contact with them and try and see if you want to, or if you're a practitioner, irrespective of whether you are certified or not, if you're using DA and if you have got real-time you know, feedback to some of the practices that we are following from the process map, process goals, you can very much, you know, send that feedback to them, and, you know, if it is valid, they will adopt to it. So it is still kind of a very open source kind of thing. It's not very constant by a specific set of people, but yeah. So to answer your question directly, by looking at this release schedule, you can easily see that there is a quarterly release plan. So by end of December, by end of this year, we will have DA 6.0 release as per the release schedule. Yeah, Mula, I hope that answers your question. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So yeah, I don't want to kind of complicate it, Pete. My way of presentation is very, you know, with example and kind of very interactive. I don't know why there are not audio questions here, but I will now wait for more questions rather than, because I don't have much to cover, you know, from the slides perspective. Guided continuous improvement, how it is different from continuous improvement is something which is very important for us all to know. We don't have to remain in the boundary of a particular framework. You know, we have to be, when we say guided, it is pointing towards a DA toolkit. Okay, so saying that, look at DA toolkit, which is very vast, which is studied on ongoing basis, which has got lots of other updates. Look at that as an option. Try and see what is the best that you can choose to select your ways of working. If it is working for you, adopt. If it is not working for you, skip it, but ensure that you update the learning and move on.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, very much.
Okay, cool. So I guess there is a hand up, but I think we can take a question from Karim. There's a question.
Thanks.
Yep.
My question is, if you're a company, let's say you have an organization that is new or trying to transition to agile, to being more agile, would you, from your perspective, think it would, the utilization of the toolkit, the DA toolkit, would serve them better in terms of making that transition, as opposed to, let's say, which is the usual approach in some industries, just to apply a safe framework?
Yeah, a very good question, Karim, and I'll tell you with my experience, right? The moment you say that some organization wants to go away from their old ways of working to agile, I don't want to say waterfall, but I think it will be mostly waterfall, right? Normally you will see organization taking time to understand the agile principles and agile manifesto, right? To them, that is the first step, right? You need to understand what is their problem statement, right? A company who is releasing a product release once a year will never ever try to attempt that release cycle to be changed to once a week or once a month. You will never see that. That's a very big change for them, and they cannot sustain with that change. Absolutely not possible. So it means that they cannot really go from maturity level 0 to 5 directly. They have to start with something. And rather than recommending them a Scrum or Kanban or any particular thing, what I would rather suggest is, rather than even telling them what the DA toolkit is, because even DA toolkit for them will be too much, to be very honest with you, because they don't know anything at this stage, right? I think it would be good to educate them on a very foundation of Agile, which is telling them what Agile manifesto is, what Agile principles are, understanding their pain areas, how many Agile principles you can map to their problem statement, and try and see whether there's a mindset change, okay? But unless you understand the problem statement of their organization, moving from 0 to 5, would be a disaster, in my experience. Karim.
Yep. So if I can add to that, so discipline agile is agnostic, which means there are it's not it's let's call it a general toolkit. The framework might be a good starting point, but just like the guided continuous improvement flow diagram that Shrihari shared with us earlier on, there's a possibility that at some point it's just going to plateau. Now, at that point when it plateaus, what happens? Now, they look at organizations as a complex adaptive system, very complex. Complex because there is always changes that we don't know about. When it happens, when it occurs, it will affect other areas downstream. Now, the problem is we don't have the visibility of the effect of the problems. When it occurs, a lot of things might happen. It might be beyond what a particular framework will handle if it's not captured in these practices. It is also adaptive because a lot of these areas in the organizations are affecting each other, are working together, are aligning with each other. We just hope that they are doing the right thing because we don't know in the beginning. So based on these two aspects I just explained, we want to go to DA and say, oh, DA, if we open this toolkit, what are the practices? What are the ways of working, the techniques that can help us tackle that particular problem in good time, so that we can continuously improve in a guided way. And this is where the idea of using discipline agile comes in. Now, if Scrum solves your particular problem, yeah, it's okay. If SAFe solves a particular problem, okay. All of these practices are all embedded in the toolkit of disciplined agile. No framework is bad, and no one is particularly all size fits all. That's what I'll say to add to that. I hope that's
the biggest problem. Yeah, so I think that's a very good question, Karim, and I'll tell you, unfortunately, you, me, or Pete can only do a coaching and influence the decision makers, right? Try and tell them that don't go behind a specific framework or a methodology, right? Because if you see, a lot of people are saying, my organization is going the safe route, right? They're saying we'll adopt scale agile framework, right? And they don't know that this organization is so complex that each team has their own cultural issues, own different ways of working, own different problems, right? You cannot have a one size fit for all approach in any organization for that matter, right? But eventually what happens is that these decisions are taken by somebody who do not know what agile is, right? They think that when we adopt agile, we will be able to solve the problems. Wow, it's like a golden bullet, right? But it is not. They have to be educated. And that is where the disciplined agile coach job comes into play, where it's a lot of education that needs to be given right from the top, not just at the team level, right? The coach is not just at the team level. The coaching also happens at a senior level, where your vice presidents, directors, CIOs, they need to understand that there's no single silver bullet which will come and solve the problem. We will have to look at a problem, and look at different solutions, to that problem. We cannot just, and that's why one of the key principle of disciplined agile is that you need to be enterprise aware, right? You cannot just kind of apply one single bullet to everything. So there's a lot that we can talk about it, but unfortunately we don't have much of a time left. But a very right question asked, and I hope you are satisfied with the answers. If not, please shout.
Yeah, you gave some good context, so I can always reach out to you for further discussion. Appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's very good. Thank you for that. You can always reach out to myself, to Shrihari, to Patrick as well on this call. These are DAVSEs that could actually help in this area. There is a question from Margo, for Har Margo, and the question is posted on the chat message. How do you identify what aspects needs improvement? Is it off the retrospective, or is there another way? So the question is, how do we identify what needs improvement?
Yeah, so there are two things which will, very good question. There are two things. One is, yes, retrospective, but retrospectives are sometimes very qualitative, right? They have got a lot of sentiments attached to it, and they're qualitative and subjective, which is not bad, which is good to have. But the another thing is quantitative, where basically you set, I think how some of the KPIs that you set for yourself, right? So you have some metrics and measurements, to be defined upfront, saying that this is your quality metric, this is your speed metric, this is your whatever different segments of the software that or at team level, whatever metrics that you want to set. If you're not meeting those metrics, it means that there's something wrong, right? Doesn't mean that, and I hope that those metrics are realistic, right? So you need to have a mixture of qualitative and quantitative measures to see whether things are in the right direction or not, right? But the improvement doesn't have to be always related to the output, right? For example, I'll give a very simple example. If stand-ups are not working, I have seen that problem not being solved at many teams. They call it as a stand-up, but it's a 70-minute stand-up, right? There are 50 people giving the status updates in that stand-up, and it's very boring meeting. Everybody has to stand up and talk about their project update every single day. It's a waste of time. Stand-up has to be real quick, 10 minutes, right? If it is not working, you don't need a measure. In the retrospective, somebody has to shout saying that I'm just giving a 2-minute update, and I'm actually in a meeting from last 70 minutes. What is the best use of my time, right? It's very qualitative, very subjective retrospective, but you will be able to improve that by finding a different, better method of giving status updates. You don't need a status meeting for that. You can basically use information radiators, where everybody can go and look at the Jira dashboards and see where are the blockers, which story is blocking which particular story, which story is not going to be finished in this sprint. You don't require a stand-up for that. Stand-up is there for something else. Very small example, but you can understand where I'm going with this.
Cool. Thank you. I hope that answers your question. On top of that, every time there are changes, there are opportunities to improve. To say that no matter how perfect the system is, there are always opportunities to improve. And when you check those opportunities of improvement, what happens is there is a root cause. And those root cause, when you identify those issues, then there is a potential for improvement from there. And then you can begin to use the guided continuous improvement practice to really see how you can improve. Yep. Cool.
Yeah. We did not talk about improvement backlogs, and we did not talk about lots of other things in today's call, but because it is a little bit a wider topic, but happy to kind of take a separate session on in terms of the entire life cycle of improvement backlog and how they are measured, because today you only talked about improvements, right? But there's a lot that happens in the life cycle which DA recommends, where you have to have a backlog of improvements and then prioritize that backlog based on certain techniques, right? And then try and see if some of those improvement backlogs are actually coming. I mean, there are a lot of things, which we can talk about. Probably, Pete, we can have a separate session on that if there's a lot of interest coming out of that stuff.
Yes, absolutely. We can organize that, definitely. Yeah, I'm looking at the time. We have just to, okay, there is a comment from Patrick, which I need to really read out. One of the greatest advantages of DA is the application of systems thinking. You see the entire body and how each action affects other units. Absolutely, this is really on point. Systems thinking is actually one thing that is on the mind of every disciplined agile, practitioner, not only disciplined agile practitioner, but agile practitioners generally. So improving an aspect of your system does not automatically, most times, translate to the global improvement. So systems thinking is quite important.
Yeah. The
Cool.
moment you attach discipline agile and system thinking, a lot of people from Scrum gets disappointed. Not Scrum, sorry. A lot of people from Safe get disappointed because they feel that it is their baby, but actually it is nobody's baby. It is basically baby of agility.
Okay, cool. Last minute before we call it a day, I guess this should be a good time to call it a day. If there is no more question.
Yeah, I think so. So thank you for the participation. I thought initially that probably there's going to be a little bit inactive participation, but at the middle and at the end, I really got very good questions and opportunity to answer. But again, this session was 1 hour session. I don't think that everything can be covered here. Happy to be contacted offline. You can talk to Pete, you can talk to me. You can add me on LinkedIn. At the end of the day, sharing is caring, right? Discipline agile is in the state of evolution, right? It is not as marketed as some of the other agile frameworks, right? And it's a toolkit. So such kind of efforts, which now PMI is having, it requires a lot of feedback from user community, right? In terms of what is working, what is not working, etc. So we need to have such kind of forums, and thanks Pete for running such things. Happy to contribute more wherever needed, but we all need to kind of consciously contribute to it, because we take a lot of things from them. We need to contribute back to the community as well. Thank you.
All right, it's really very great to have you here, Shrihari, and really talking about the guided continuous improvement with us today. We saw the practicality of the concept, and I've used it a lot of times. I'm using it almost every day at work. If you have more information or more questions, you can always reach out to Shrihari. I believe you have really enjoyed today, and some really great comments are coming on the chat. People are saying thank you to you. Thanks for the presentation, engaging and collaborative session. I can't agree more. There is a clap from Karim. And thank you everyone for really participating. So next month, we'll be bringing another person, another practitioner to really talk about very practical aspect of working in our organization. So we want to make it very practical. So hopefully, you can continue to join us. One ask is, if there is any topic you would like us to talk about, you can always drop it as well, so that we can prioritize that. Trust me, we've got over 50 topics that are currently put together, but of course, we can always prioritize some of the topics that the community really wants. So at the end of the day, we want you to come in here, grab something, not only something you're going to go back to your organization tomorrow and really practice. And I can see a topic come up from Dennis, when to give up on Agile. Okay, that might be a good discussion. Definitely we'll do something about that. All right. So I don't want to take much of your time. It's almost probably dinner time for most of you on the call. I will say thank you for joining today, and also thank you for those good compliments that are coming on the screen, on the chat box. Really appreciate them. I'll see you in a month's time. And of course, we'll share more of information as early as possible about what topic we are talking about next month and who is going to share from his wealth or her wealth of ideas to us. Until then, I want to say thank you and have a very wonderful evening, morning, or afternoon, wherever you are joining us from. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, hello.